My name's Julie Catron. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Cyberleaf, and I am joined by Will Ogle, who leads our CMM practice and has been very busy talking to customers and industry partners and lots of different people over the last couple weeks as this news has broke. What's the major takeaway for today? Let's just start with the good stuff and then we can dive deeper into it. So, Will, what's our bold line up front at this point with what we know about this phase two pause?
Yeah, so the suspension doesn't mean canceled. That's sort of a few hot takes I've had over the last week or two from our clients who are not doesn't live in the CMM space every day like I do, and some of the companies have said, hey, let's pause everything and just treat this as a finish line, and it's all canceled. And the reality of the matter is, it's not. The bottom line up front is it is not canceled. The DFARS 7012 clauses still remain. Your primes are still giving you directives as subs to be compliant. And for our clients and our future clients, that could be an expensive mistake to make. And I've very much told our clients and future clients to stay the course for CMMC if they're already on the journey. If they're thinking about CMMC now, that's one area you could say, well, we're not ready quite yet for this. We're dabbling in the space. But if you already have contracts or you're already bidding on contracts, or have been awarded contracts, staying the course is the best approach, in my opinion. It takes a lot of risk off the table. Many executives have put investments, capital investments, to become CMMC compliant. It's good hygiene. It's good security. It also reduces your liability insurance. There's so many ancillary value propositions there and so many benefits. The performance standards, the how you could be compliant, but the end state is still protect CUI. It's still in your contractual clauses. It's still in the language. The bar didn't move, the clock did, just a little bit further down the way. And it does give a lot of clients a bit of a breathing room who are right there at the finish line. They're scrambling to get assessed, but the big takeaway is continue the course.
I'm curious to hear from you. What's the one thing that you wish people understood that they might not be getting from some of those other sources, some of those other perspectives? What do you think is getting missed right now?
Everybody is reading this through their own seat in the defense industrial base ecosystem. Assessors are reading it. Managed services providers are reading this. Contractors, almost everybody has a stake in the game here. And, when the announcement came out, I have quite a few peers in the industry. I said, what's your hot take on this? They said, my head hurts. This makes my head hurt. This rocked the entire ecosystem. One of the takeaways was that, the government said the delivery model is broken, and the delivery was broken, but not the security requirements. The security requirements are broken. They're still necessary and they're still needed. The CIO, the Department of War, Honorable Christine Davis, has stated it's a bit of a framed thing to say that that something. The next version of this needs to be scalable. And the prior CIO did the same thing as well. But let's take a knee, take a pause, and take a look at what we're really trying to accomplish here. Another part of the conversation is that with everybody having a different part in the game, a part of the conversation has been the small, medium-sized businesses have felt crushed with the amount of work needed to get to the finish line. If you're a small machine shop and it's you and it's a family business, small part in a very, very large defense industrial base machine under the Department of War, the big thing is don't relax, I think, is one of the takeaways. The destination is the same. The road just is taking a bit of a different turn. The deadline's been extended. This does with small, medium-sized businesses that are getting the contracts. This is a win for you in some cases because it gives you a bit of breathing room to get right from a CMMC's perspective and get good cybersecurity health in your organization. So that's what I wish people would understand.
Sure. Makes sense. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the 60-day pause because that's really what's like front and center right now. We're waiting to see what happens after this point in time. So, and you touched on this a little bit. Anything to add to kind of the question, like what's really paused and what is not paused at all?
So the third party mandate is now paused.
Okay.
The self-attestation, your SPRS scoring, your system security plan, that's all still in play, right? And that was set for November 10th. Again, there was a lot of what I call CMMC anxiety. I was with a client the other day. I call it the CMMC anxiety pendulum. Get ready, get fast, or get fast, get healthy from a cybersecurity perspective. And oh, by the way, it's not just an IT function within your organization. It's the entire organization that accesses, processes, or stores CUI. And that's a part of that conundrum is some of the business units that IT typically doesn't talk to. HR is one of those places that if IT is talking to HR or HR is talking to IT in the past, it's never been a great conversation. It's always been a challenge to break those silos out. But, with the takeaway, the for becoming L2 certified, that has moved. Under the R2, the baseline, your SPRS score, your DFARS flow downs haven't changed. That's still in motion. The DIBCAC assessments are still in motion. The government CUI rule is still in motion. It's not going away, right? So when companies are like, we should stop and stop, that's not gone away. As well as the FAR overhaul, is still untouched at this point. So all those other ancillary requirements, they're still there. So the referee is sort of stepped off the field, but the rules to the game haven't changed, right? They're still there. They're still big.
Nice analogy. So if you were to bet, or we were to kind of look forward and speculate a little bit on what we think the outcome of that 60-day pause and evaluation might be, what are just some realistic scenarios that we might see come out of that evaluation later this fall?
So I'll bucket these into about three big scenarios. The one that is the least likely is that it is going to go away. That's the very least likely. In the documentation, if you read a little bit further beyond just the headlines, this is very much still aligned to HECSS directive to maintain security, maintain the supply chain, maintain good cybersecurity health, prevent espionage, these type of things. So that doesn't go away. There's a lot of people talking that like it is. The reality is it's not. So the scenarios that I see, the big three, a lighter touch model for CMMC L2, more self-attestation, more acceptance of commercial security solutions, tiered data sensitivity. It already exists. So you get CUI, they call it the spectrums and CUI assets within that spectrum. And that's really where those RFI that's coming from the Department of War is asking, where are some of these areas we could see improvements? And they want everybody to participate. There was a meeting with some of our industry peers, and that was one of the takeaways that they wanted us to respond to the RFI. And many of the small, medium-sized businesses and SMB organizations are responding to that. So I think that's the highest likely. Scenario two, I call it the delayed restart. So moving the finish line for self-attestation is not going away. The being assessed by C3PAO, I think that is highly likely for them to move that to another date. And we'll get to that in just a minute, but under the current model, it's a bit more phased, and they may say, okay, if you're a small business, you don't have to self-attest. You can still maintain your self-attestation and then be fully assessed in 2027 or 2028 or something to that effect. Scenario three, and I've been really thinking about this, is a more deep restructuring. I think that's less likely or the least likely, but when pressed by some of the other big news organizations to some of the public officials or some of the government officials, they pointed out that the decline to rule out a significant change. And in some of the discussions in the past we've had in the industry at large is something to move to the effect of, have you guys considered moving from NIST 171 R2 to R3? Which is a big change from R2 to R3, but it is something that has been rumbling around in the industry at large, if you will. And many of the assessors, assessees, and that sort of thing are looking at NIST 171 R3, but it is a bit different from R2, quite a bit of a difference. So, yeah.
Okay. Appreciate those scenarios.
I'm sorry, reform, not repeal. That's one, reform, not repeal. That's my big thing.
Okay. Appreciate
We'll
that.
know in September. Yeah, so September's the big day that they're going to reveal all the news.
We've heard some feedback. Some of the more official bodies that are sharing information seem pretty guarded right now. And just curious from your perspective, your read on why some of the larger bodies or more official organizations have had to kind of keep things close to the chest right now.
Yeah, so some of the closer organizations are very close to the Pentagon, keeping it close to the chest. One of the things I think it is they just genuinely don't know. The CIO identifies that there's a problem. There's an inefficiency. We as taxpayers want our government to be more efficient, continue to mature and serve us as taxpayers, if you will. So I think for them, those are just outside that are part of the CMMC ecosystem. They genuinely don't know yet. The task force they've instantiated doesn't have a written outcome. Getting out any organization worth their salt that's trying to get ahead of the government would be reckless. This would be a reckless professional opinion. And for those of us that are certified in the space or, are part of the C3PAO or RPO or what have you, it would be a bit reckless to have a formalized opinion to say, you should be stomping your foot on the ground. Tell us what to do is not the best approach. There's also self-interest tension because you've got so many parts of this industry and economy, C3PAO, RPO, individuals that are certified, playing it safe, I think, is the best approach because we know that the headwinds for CMMC continually to change. It changed about 2, 3 years ago. It changed before that from 1.0 to 1.5 to 2.0. So being guarded isn't evasive. It's appropriate. And again, nobody credible is going to get out in front of this on live federal news and just start, blasting the federal government. That's a recipe for disaster, I think.
Sure,
So
makes sense. One of the things that was in the very early announcement about this phase two pause and listed as one of the reasons for the pause and the evaluation is a shortage of assessors. Do we have a shortage of assessors? Is that how real is that? How overstated is that?
there, so this is a point of contention in the industry at large, and and a very hot topic. And because I've worked with a lot of really intelligent people that are really big into the maths, it doesn't take a mathematician or a PhD to realize the math isn't mathing here. You've got roughly 100 authorized C3POs to do assessments. You get roughly 1,000 certified individuals that can do the assessments. One of the delineations I pointed out in over 100,000, 200, and the numbers keep going up every time the government looks at how many organizations there are in the defense industrial base that need to be assessed. At one point it was 30, at one point it was 80. They kept digging a little deeper, like, well, this is 100. Now it's 220,000. They're like, well, maybe it's roughly 350,000. So again, they're the bean keepers keep those numbers at play. But what I would like to say is I do think that there's not enough assessors and assessor organizations to do the assessment work. One of the statistics that they're not keeping under or not being very public with are how many CCAs or how many people that are certified are not a part of C3POs or not a part of RPOs. They're actually part of the OSC community, and they're representing their company as an informed certified practitioner in the space to represent them as they become assessed, to be informed through the assessment approach and methodology. So that's one of the numbers that hasn't been very publicly published. They may not be taking that information, but I think, the math is not mathing, and it is a bottleneck is a true statement. Another part of that CPA or the shortage is the bill to play and become CMMC L2 certified. There's a lot of costs there. There's a lot of financial cost. And to reiterate my earlier statement, it takes a lot if you're going to go into this Google enclaves, continued technological costs continue to rise. It's a capital investment and it becomes an operational cost over time. So with the statement that was the math isn't just mathing, I think that cannot be overstated enough. I think there is a capacity problem. And I think that's a really big part of what's forced the pause is there's just not enough organizations assess. It's on as far as what the projections from the Department of War, Department of Defense have had with what they were expecting. It's still what they were expecting, but it's still not moving as quickly as they would like. And I think that is a big part of what's forced the pause.
Okay, appreciate that. You mentioned earlier if you're thinking about staying the course or taking a breather, now's the time to kind of take advantage of this pause. Actually, it's actually to your advantage to keep going. So let's talk about that in a little bit more detail. And I know one of the other things that we've talked about internally is that regardless of what that deadline is set at, there's also the deadline that your prime's set. And so let's talk contracts. Let's talk what happens when two vendors show up, one's certified and one's not. How does that play out in an evaluation of contracts?
Yeah. So if you're on the fence, I like to call it, be smarter about why. If you're building and have in building for a November date that now has been moved, goalpost has been moved, it's not going away. It is making a comeback. It may come back with a furiosity you're not ready for, right? So build for excellence. The three words I've stated over and over: stay the course. The cost of stopping is a real financial cost for your organization. Unwinding and rebuilding a CU enclave has costs, real financial, tangible costs. If you build an enclave or leveraging one of the platform providers in the CMMC space, there's great companies that do that. Continuing to stay down the course, and the costs are only going to go up. That's the reality. It's going to go up. So more than just rebuilding an enclave, it's just you have to maintain it. As you get your SPRS score, you are L2 certified. There's also after that, a lot of the customers I work with, they're like, okay, we're L2 certified, we're done. Like, well, there's also the monthly, quarterly business reviews, making sure your access control, make sure the scope boundaries operating isn't needed. And if you need to be reevaluated because you've materially changed your system security plan, let's talk about what a reevaluation, reassessment would look like. But the cost of stopping is real. And for me, a lot of our customers in the space, this pause is a gift of time. As you get older, I'm definitely getting up. I have a baby face, right, obviously, but I am getting a little bit older. The gift of time is something you can't replace. It's kind of like spending time with your kids. This is not a get out of jail free card by any stretch of the imagination. It allows you a little bit of time to spend a little bit more time with your documentation. It gives you a little bit more time to put in your system security plan to make sure it's more resilient, it's shored up, and it's battle ready for your L2 assessment. That's what I like to call it. Also, clean up your SPRS score. If you've put a SPRS score in there and you're looking at it, you're like, some things have changed. Let's reevaluate. You can resubmit your. I've done it a number of times. Yeah, I'll go in and I'll say, what if we change this? How does that impact our SPRS score? Oh, hey, let's go in and we're in. I think for our C2 or our L2, I think we're in our 5th year with our first one. Let's go in there and let's see if we need to make a material change. How would that affect our SPRS score? What do we need to be reevaluated? It's another part of it. So this stuff is hard to fake. If you're investing that time to take that as a gift of time, invest the time to make sure your documentation. There's at CMMC L2, there's 110 controls, but beneath that, there's the 320 control objectives. You're being assessed at 320 control objectives. This is a surprise to many of our customers who are earlier in the CMMC journey. They're like, wait a second, what are you telling me? This is, you said 110. Like, well, it's 320. And you have to have a statement for that. You have to prove that you're meeting these requirements. And oh, by the way, the assessors are going to make you prove that. If you can't, you're sort of in a pickle. So I think this as a gift of time. Use it as a gift of time. Any sort of challenge like this gives you a little bit more of a breath, gives you a little bit more of an opportunity. Having a good self-attestation SPRS score and you giving that to your prime or leveraging that as a opportunity to get a contract, land a contract, because government procurement officers, they're looking to make sure that you're knocking out all the boxes. And if they can't get you an L2, they're like, well, your competitor has an L2, right? It's an easier decision for government procurement officers. It's also an easier decision for primes. It reduces their liability, it reduces their risk, and it shows that you, as a defense contractor, as a construction company, as a manufacturer, manufacturing widgets, you've put down as best you can a good foundation to build off of from a cybersecurity perspective. So that's my hot take on it's a gift of time. That's what I think of it and see it as.
Good hot take. Let's shift gears a little bit into this idea of basics excellence. So, just kind of throwing that term out there and that idea, what is it? Where did it come from? What are we talking about when we say basics excellence?
So, if you go to the original post and you go down to the bottom of the post, there's a hyperlink. I like to read everything. I'm big into the documentation. Anybody that knows me knows I'll sit up late at night, write documentation. So one of the things when you look at the bottom, okay, let's look at the basics. Multi-factor authentication, access control, audit logging and monitoring, some of these things that they've been around for some time. This is not that new. This is table stakes for many regulated spaces, whether it be in financial services, whether it be in healthcare, any one of these regulated spaces. This has been very much some of the basic table stakes. And it's not easy to do either. Access control is not easy because it takes time, it takes diligence. It's the samurai call it the kata. It's something you do every day, and you just become really good at it. It's just a part of what you do. Part of that is good access control, making sure people have the right amount of access at the right time when they're supposed to have it, and then when they move on, so does the access, logical and physical access. You take their badge, you take them off Active Directory list. That's the way the businesses should operate in this space. The whole premise behind CMMC is espionage. So our would-be adversaries, if you will, took the F-35 fighter and ran with the documentation. So exfiltration of data, exfiltration of information is the name of the game. And that's why the back of the basics is doing some of those basic security practices is good security. It's the foundation that where good security is built off of. And, with the Department of War's signaling the back to the basics, fundamentals and the posture. And as the branding's settling in, the direction is really clear to me and a lot of the people in the industry. And for cybersecurity practitioners like myself, we've been fighting this for 20 years. Please lock your doors, right?
Right.
Please use your badges. Please don't let people into the building that aren't supposed to be in the building. Please use good VLANs. Please use good cybersecurity practices. Please use your work computers for doing work things and not, doing other things like, getting on the social media, on your work computer, unless you're marketing. Really, you obviously have an exception, right? So, but these things, good security practices help prevent complex breaches, help prevent these things. And those fundamentals done well, identity, access control, patching, configuration management, I call them the big four. Anytime I do some of my walkthroughs and briefs with our people that are uninitiated in the CMMC space, the big four fundamentals: access, patching, configuration management. If you've covered those, then you're brilliantly ahead of the curve with reducing your overall risks. And it's worth, confirming with your vendors as well. If you've got suppliers in there, are you guys doing good best practices security wise, right? Phrasing that to your vendor supply chain as well and saying, hey, are you guys doing these things? Not just, are you going to be financially viable in the next 2 to 3 years? Your CFO is going to have that conversation. Are they going to be able to pay their bills? Are we going to be able to pay them, vice versa? But are they going to be good stewards of your information, good stewards of that relationship, and build trust with each other over time? So it's a bit of a philosophy underneath the reform. Master the fundamentals is what it comes down to. Be brilliant with the fundamentals before you start getting into the more exotic things, like those more exotic, fun cybersecurity things we like to talk about.
So you said that that was linked at the bottom of the first post or the first article. Does that indicate anything to you about maybe where some of this is headed, or was it just a good reminder of where to start and how to master the basics?
Yeah, so I'm a prior military. We like to call it a warning order. Hey, we're about to do something important. Get
Uh-huh.
ready, right? It's a messaging to the entire industry that a lighter outcome focused model is going to be a part of this endeavor. The rewards for doing the fundamentals and well documentation are being repeated over and over in much of the information that's coming out of the Department of War and the primes as well. This also is aligned to the reforms being scalable, realistic, and not being overly bureaucratic with the compliance. But on the flip side of the coin, and I've had larger conversations with my counterparts on the security side of the house. Security is very much yes, no. That's the way it is. It's very binary for them. But on the compliance side, it's yes, no, maybe so for us. If you move this ball down the court in this way, now you're very much more secure. And if you're not, then let's talk about that. But I do think that that's where it's headed. They're, with the RFI that they put out, the task force is going to use that to help inform the future of what that looks like. If you're betting, bet that the fundamentals are going to be done well.
Mhm.
And reform is a part of this. And reform models, some of the biggest challenges is in the NIST 171, which is the performance standard that organizations are being measured against. It's some of those feel duplicative, like some of the AC controls, access controls are also in the identity and access management. They're also in some of the maintenance areas as well. So we'll see some of those maybe streamlined. But
Gotcha.
the fundamentals, again, it's a foundation and that's going to be built well that your organization is going to need, and it's in line with the Department of War CIO intent and as well as Hexas intent as well.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, before we wrap up, I want to take an opportunity to just kind of dive into some of the more tactical things that we've talked about before that might be helpful for anybody that is in this process and has had confusion or has questions about some of these more tactical things. And one of them being that sometimes CUI isn't always labeled the way that it should be labeled. And so like what does that look like in practice, and what's for a company, what's their obligation when that is not labeled the right way?
Yeah. So this is also a hot topic in the industry as well. There's a lot of gray area for what is and is not CUI. One of the points that our new CIO, the honorable CIO, is put into play is that, gosh, a CUI is not crystal clear for much of the defense industrial base. It's not clear for the parts of the government and the military, right? So let's put some clarity there, right? The government, in sometimes we're all humans, may mismark or undermark CUI in the field doing field work. I've seen in small letters, maybe in 12-point font in a footer, CUI, and then a arrow that points up. I'm looking at that. I'm like, that's not how NARA says to do it. That's not how the organization that was, says you should mark CUI, which is crystal clear at the bottom, at the header and the footer, and sometimes in the
Mhm.
middle, and sometimes a little bit everywhere else as well. But it's not quite there. So you'll see these things. This is the reality of doing field work and being in the field and supporting
Sure.
client work. In practice, you may receive CUI that's not marked clearly. In practice, you may have clients, partners that you're working with. It may be carte block. Every email that comes to you just may have CUI in it across the board. And the reality is it doesn't. It's just an email saying, hey, how's it going? Right. But in practice, unmarked versus marked, as you interpret CUI, there's a very precise, very legalese term for what CUI is out there. That's another part of the problem is that this was written by lawyers and practitioners and most, it's not common. Like, it's as clear as it can be when you have
Sure.
things written by lawyers. But the obligation doesn't change to protect CUI as you receive it and then as you create it. The nature of the information. If you need help, most companies have a contracting officer. You can, what a crazy idea, reach out to the person that sent it to you. Hey, is this CUI? Right? When you think about the sales to the entire cycle from a process standpoint, as right before it gets to the business unit, some of that stuff may have parts and pieces of CUI in it. Bill of materials, work papers, things of that nature may have parts of CUI in there, but the obligations don't change. Document it when asked, and then unmarked doesn't mean it shouldn't be protected. If it walks like CUI, talks like CUI, it
Yeah.
should be CUI.
Okay.
So
So, okay, next question then is sometimes there's ambiguity around CUI upon receipt and upon creation. Can you break down the distinction between those two in plain terms?
okay, this is another hot topic in the industry. I love that.
I feel like everything we is
No,
another hot
yeah.
topic.
Once you get in this space, you're like, okay, let's unpack this a bit. So, upon receipt, if a government entity sends you something that's clearly marked as CUI, upon receipt, it's yours. There are government websites you can go to. You can download a document, a contract, and it'll be clearly marked CUI. Upon receipt, upon you receiving that in your email inbox, you should protect that as CUI. If you're working with a prime and they send something to you, clearly marked CUI, you should treat that as CUI. I'd say, hey, look, rose-colored glasses on. Everything that CUI should be the CUI world. There's always the oopsies. There's always the accidents that clients will get into their inbox. Hey, this should be CUI. Okay, well let's reach out to that person. Hey, I'm gonna not use my commercial email for this. I'm gonna use my GCC high email inbox for this, or my GCP government email inbox for this. Let's move this over here. This is a safer place and a safer space for this to be, as for us to communicate. It's encrypted. It's meeting all the CMMC requirements as such. So upon creation, engineering drawings. This is another hot topic. If you're creating an engineering drawing from a controlled CUI spec, you should protect that as CUI. So upon creation of that, in the manufacturing space, when things come together, you've got bolts that fit on a bigger piece, that fit on another larger piece, that goes into another piece that's being coated and then put together, assembled. When you're putting Lego pieces together, it becomes CUI at that point. That asset now becomes, it's a physical asset that now should be protected. So that is upon creation is a good example of that. So in some cases, it's very explicit in government contracts, derived technical data, drawings, deliverables. This is where it is very firm in the CUI space. In some cases, there's always an overlap for CUI and FCI, federal contract information, controlled unclassified information. But the scope of that, those bounds, it gets blurry from when you get into the business side of the house. So having a realistic conversation of where that CUI data flows, where does it go, and where are the safe places it should be, and then where are the safe places it should be accessed from, and who should be accessing those are some of the bigger areas. But it gets, if you're being assessed, part of it is when the examiner comes in and says, "Show me that you're doing these things." They'll ask, "Well, what about you say you're doing this in your system security plan?" The reality is, I'm seeing some drawings on the facility floor, and the CMMC industry is a hot topic as well, right? So
Yeah.
when you combine these bill of materials, when you combine these government provided drawings or documents, that's definitely CUI. But if you're an organization and it's your intellectual, it's a COTS item, a COTS commercial off the shelf item, that's just outside the boundary. If this is an intellectual property that the organization has created, like this is how we powder coat a thing, this is how we machine a specific part, that's more on the intellectual property of the organization and not so much CUI. So if you're looking to delineate that, navigate that territory, one, reference and talk to a CMMC expert like myself on our team, or somebody that is in that space that's more on the legal side, because there's also some bleed over into what the language is that you've agreed to in your contract. There's also some bleed over if there is a reference to ITAR. So there's also references to ITAR. There's also manufacturing specs. Many of our clients are in the manufacturing industry have manufacturing specs. Like from a QA, this has to be within these bounds, spaces and places that also you have to work through. So some of that is on the intellectual property, some of that's CUI. And one other principle I'll bring into the conversation: if a reasonable person that you brought off the street outside of your organization that doesn't understand what CUI is, if you brought that person off the street and they looked at something physical or otherwise, and they're like, that looks like something from G.I. Joe, it may be CUI. right? If it
Yeah.
looks like a laser, taser, phaser, things of that nature, right?
Yeah.
Probably in the CUI aspect. If a reasonable person comes in and says that looks like one of those things, it's probably CUI. So walks like a duck, quacks like a duck's probably a duck. So treat it like CUI, protect it like CUI, but also continue building safeguard to build a safeguarding foundation as well.
Okay. You mentioned the business side of the house and things can get blurrier on that side. So my question is CUI doesn't just live in engineering. It moves through an organization. It moves through sales and purchasing and facilities. And I'm curious where you see contract companies, where you see companies lose track of that.
Great example. Things that are never scoped, purchasing is a good example. So they're going through and buying a lot of things to build the things. Sales, the whole sales cycle is a part of it. They may dabble into the CUI zone, as I like to call it, or the FCI, mostly the FCI zone, Federal Contract Information Zone, but they may be dabbling in the CUI zone. Shipping is another good example. So if you're building a widget, a part, or what have you, and you go to the shipping side of the house, would a reasonable person see that as a military GI Joe type item, laser, taser, phaser, orchestrator, things of that nature? If that is a fact, then that's something to be considered. Shipping is another good example, and I use the private information analogy. If your name and your address is on a label, that's perfectly fine. If your name and address and your social security and your date of birth are on there, that's private information. That's protected information. The same thing
Mhm.
can be said as you think about CUI within the CUI scope boundaries. Is it a name and an address? So one of the big primes and their address. If you're shipping something out the door, it's not CUI. If you unpackage that, it's going to have things underneath there that would be considered CUI. But going back into shipping and receiving, it's just a package with a name and address on it. As it is assembled, then that becomes CUI. It should be detected as CUI. But another packaging that goes on top of that as it's going out the door is their mailing address and the name of the company you're sending it to, public information. So that's one of the areas that you can and should delineate to. And then for that's one of the areas that CUI can get lost is in the shipping and receiving. Common link points to suppliers, controlled specs are one of those things. They'll ask, give me the entire specs for this, whatever, whatever. Proposals, sales, quality records. QA is an example where there's usually a lot of CUI, quality assurance, to making sure that things are built to the spec that they're supposed to be built
Sure.
to. Mil specs usually public information, so that's okay. But when you're looking at a shop traveler or a traveler going on the floor, that's where you'll see some of this commingling of information. And what is my big suggestion, especially if you're using a very old legacy ERP system? Let's try to anonymize that, right? So again, if somebody's coming off the floor, they would not realize like, hey, this is a laser, taser, phaser, ordnance, firearm, what have you. They just wouldn't know it. So that's one thing. RFQs are from a supplier is one area that you'll see some of that leakage point. Scoping for IT engineering, some of that information rides along with the quote, if you will, and some of that will be hedging into that CUI zone, if you will.
Gotcha.
But CUI doesn't respect your org chart. It doesn't respect your engineering team. It doesn't respect any of those guys. So if it needs to be secured, you should probably
Mhm.
secure it. That's the way I see it.
Okay. And what about when it's time to get rid of it? So, what does proper CUI destruction require, and where do you see people get that right, get that wrong?
Yeah. So it means unrecoverable. That's the headline. Is if it's under the CMMC requirements, there's a NIST 800 NIST special publication 800-88 for how to destroy things.
Okay.
It has a variety of ways to destroy things. If you're having a good example is you have a shop traveler, it's a paper document. Sometimes it's a binder. Sometimes it has some other metadata or meta information in there. But when it's done and it's in paper form, just shred it is not quite enough. You want to have like a cross-side shredder. If you're a large commercial organization, there are companies out there. I don't endorse Shreddit, but Shreddit's a very much a name brand in the space that can give you a receipt of destruction, making sure it's under the right CMMC specs for data destruction, whether it be a paper or a hard drive or anything else that carries that type of media. But you want to find a good company that is a reliable company that can destroy that. And the protection of that as it's being disposed of as well. Many companies will put it in a locked bin before it's shredded. You want to have it in a more secure area as it's being disposed of. I was introduced to a very large crushing machine here recently that was, if you were to, I'm sure it's been on CSI a couple of times, but that's a way to dispose like big metal parts and pieces. But
Gotcha.
that's a few things to think about as you're thinking about destruction. And lastly, if somebody can reassemble this, pull it off a decommissioned printer, it's not really destroyed. It's just been misplaced. In the cybersecurity world, for physical cybersecurity or physical security, the term we call them is dumpster divers. They'll literally jump in your dumpster and look for your shredded material and then glue it back together like a collage. Kids did that in the 90s. I know the kids do that. Don't do that anymore. But there's things in the 90s we called collages, and you glue them together and tape them together.
I remember the night.
Yeah, and that's how corporate espionage happens, and that's how it happened in the 90s. So, but that's still that is still a probability today. It's something people should be concerned with. So that's data destruction in short.
I like it. I always like to wrap things up with something really tactical or tangible that someone watching or listening could take away and kind of be thinking about like what their immediate next action is. So if somebody is watching this and they're 3 months into their SPRS score cleanup, like what's the like single next step you would tell them to take this week, given the environment we're in right now, the 60-day pause, everything that's going on around us? What would you say to someone?
This week, validate your SPRS score. Go into the PIEE system and say, does this match reality? And then have a friend, ask them, do you think this matches reality? Pull your score, look at the highest value gaps that you may or may not have, and look at met and how you're evidencing the met, how you're evidencing the not met. If you're publishing a SPRS score and you're saying that you're met and you're not met, I don't like to bring this up very often, but it's a false claims act problem waiting to happen. It's risk you're putting on your organization. But try to make it as honest as you can. But before you try to raise the score, the goal is not to raise the score. Really is to have a very honest opinion about your SPRS score. Make sure you feel very confident in your SPRS score. Make sure you're very honestly answering the answers to that. And in some cases, if you've not had an outside opinion, like if somebody that works in an RPO, registered practitioning organization that's registered with Cyber AB, if you're asking somebody off the street that's a cybersecurity expert and is not an RPO, they don't have any skin in the game, to be honest. So find your local RPO, find your local cybersecurity expert who's dabbled and is registered with as a registered practitioner organization or CCP, CCA. Somebody feels confident and comfortable with what the CMMC universe is looking at now, what the future is going to look like, and where you are in reality. And make sure you feel confident in your SPRS score. Take a look at
Next
your
week.
SPRS score. Really dig into it. That's my immediate next step.
Gotcha. Okay. If someone wanted to get in touch with you and start a conversation, even just kind of get a feel for where they're at in the process and where they might need some help, how would someone start that conversation with you or get a hold of you?
There's a couple different ways. Reach out on LinkedIn. There's a lot of conversations going on. You can reach out directly to me or Julie or the team here at Cyberleaf. Look us up if you're not familiar with us. We're a player in this space. We're really down to earth and really everybody here is just part of the family, I suppose. But I monitor all the CMMC areas. I'm on a couple chat areas as well. But whatever questions you have, there's no bad questions. Just reach out. Again, everybody is in a different place in a different space in their CMMC journey. We take many of our customers from zero to hero in the space. Last week, we got to the finish line. They said, "Gosh, thank goodness you were here. Thank goodness you were here to help us." We're more than just trusted consultants. We become a part of your family as well. So, but feel free to reach out. We monitor the industry at large. Looking forward to whatever comes out in September for the CMMC space from the Department of War. Most of our companies prior military as well, so we're very military friendly. And amongst us all, there's a couple of jarheads, so nothing against the Marine Corps, but I do like to throw some shade on the Marine Corps guys as often as I can. But or the Air Force, I mean Air Force. Feel free to reach out to us. We're very friendly, we're very comfortable in this space and working with the defense industrial base.
Cool. Thank you. All right. Well, that wraps it for today. I appreciate the time. Thanks for sharing everything that we've learned and where we're at right now. And we'll look forward to getting more information out to people as we know more this fall.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Julie.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Will.